reaction to that Harry and Meghan documentary? See, I knew you lot were going to react to that. I knew you would. The first 3 episodes of 6 dropped on Netflix at 8 o'clock this morning. Now, if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, here's a look. Now, we're in a really special position on the panel this morning because we have all watched all 3 episodes, which I'm sure you guys won't have had time to do yet, as well as anyone that's watching. But we have been able to watch all 3. What do you make of it so far, Jane?
Well, it's interesting because the trailer obviously generated a lot of heat. Like they always put together trailers, don't they, with dramatic music and footage and whatever. And then the actual first 3 episodes, I think, it's very well made. And Meghan in the trailer says, doesn't it make sense to hear it from our point of view? And after the first 3 episodes, I think, yes, it does. And I think it's helped enormously, actually. Obviously, it is their side of the story, but I think they've been quite fair in how they've presented a lot of things, because I was waiting for them to be... There's a few things I would take issue with. But primarily for me, there's a lot of themes in here. There's themes about race, obviously. There's themes about the royal family. But the overarching theme for me is that it's about fame. And in their case, it's actually about mega fame. And it's about a royal family that is an institution that back in the day, they were a bit like those old school movie stars where what they presented to you on the screen was what you saw, but behind the scenes you didn't really know much at all. They could give you whatever they wanted to give you. And now what's happened is you've got not only just the traditional media, you've got social media, you've got news websites, and you've got an institution that is like a rabbit in headlights, doesn't know how to handle the fact that there's all this. And they have become celebrities. And then into all of that, with them not being able to function with that, came Meghan, who, you know, is beautiful and smart and used to using her own voice. And suddenly she's being told, shh, shh. We don't do that like that here. And she's sort of thinking, but I want to say...
Yeah. There was a point, isn't it, where she sort of talks about the fact that the Americanisms within her, which is, you know, to be quite loud and big. That she had to learn to be smaller and become to shrink herself because that's not how the British do it. Now, when you were watching it, Kelly, I could hear you going, yes, Harry, yes! And you were getting very, very... So you go, sorry, but yes, Harry! You know, what was your take on it?
Well, what I loved about Harry was his realness to accept his faults, you know, like wearing the uniform that was inappropriate, but equally going, what do I now need to do to get this right? Which is kind of what I think we all need to do, look at ourselves sometimes and say, OK, I didn't get this right. What can I do to resolve that? From an educational perspective, the way that they've dealt with Black history, colonialism, all of that within the royal family, telling the story as it is and as it factually is, I'm talking about in terms of historical facts, I think that's a really important platform for them to make that statement known, because there's a lot of information in there that I think people still won't be aware of. And that informing their story and the little things that happen, like the brooch wearing and things that happen that kind of feed into this interweaving of this story that's now exploded in the way that it has. I really am enjoying it, and I think it's going to be a very difficult watch for lots of people that are associated, but I found it educational, and I found that it tied together the things that we're kind of thinking on the outside. Why did this happen? Why did she wear that hat? Why did she speak in this way? And we're kind of seeing the reasons behind that, and I hope that people treat it fairly and watch it as a whole programme before making a decision.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what you have to do, not make assumptions, actually watch it first without any judgment. I mean, I really related to what Meghan said about why they documented this. You know, a lot of people are quite scathing about what do we need to see this. Well, I've documented a lot of painful parts of my life, and not just for telly, but for my own records, because sometimes things are quite overwhelming and you need to be able to have perspective to look back on them. And I think also what's really clear is when you watch Harry and the archives of Princess Di in the programme is a lot changes when you become a parent. You know, when I had my first child, like my mum's here in the audience today, when I had my first child, I think I rang my mum and said, I'm really sorry for everything I did. I get it now. And, you know, Harry had this awful bereavement as such a young child. And I think now he's become a dad, this is all coming back to the surface, and he's never been able to grieve publicly. We see in the programme, they talk about this royal family formula of carrying on, going out to meet the public the day of the funeral. You know, he's obviously hurting and he's been through a real trauma.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that was evident from what we've seen so far with those 3 episodes, is he was very young to have dealt with grief. He came from essentially what loads of families up and down the country have to deal with, a broken home. Yeah. And, you know, she had to deal with something very similar. So the way that they've come together is almost kismet, one could say, because they have both been through so many similar experiences in their lives. I can imagine there are quite a few people that are watching who've seen a lot of the vitriol leading up to the launch of the documentary in the press. They'll be sort of going, well, this isn't the reaction that we should be having because everyone's been so angry about this show. But the reality is people have just got to watch it to make their own minds up.
I think the next 3 episodes that will drop at a later date might be slightly more explosive, looking at some of the clips I've seen. But, yeah, I mean, it explained a lot for me. I take it, I was present on a lot of the British media that, you know, Harry has a very, I think, slightly skewed view of the media because, obviously, of what's happened in his life and his childhood. But, you know, the British media were on a lot of the royal trips they're showing. We were there by invitation because the taxpayers are paying for those tours and the royals want you with them to show that they are giving value for money to the taxpayer. And, you know, the Necker Island photo shoot where he said we had photographs, that was 10 minutes out of a week's holiday arranged with the royal detective. So there was a lot of sort of skewed stuff, but a lot of stuff that I think was a very valid point. For me, the one thing in the whole 3 episodes that just jars is that they keep doing this thing of we want a normal life, we want to be normal, we want to be ordinary, and then they cut to a clip of them turning up at an airbase and meeting a load of ordinary families, and suddenly it's like, ladies and gentlemen, the Duke and Duchess, and they come into this room as a royal couple who are don't want to be part of the royal family. Drop the titles. Drop the titles. Still Prince, you were born a prince, but be Has and Meg and do your work. Yeah. And I think that will have a lot more validity. Don't hang on to the titles of an institution that you don't like.
But you can't say that they were in control of that introduction. You don't know when that particular event happened.
But you just go, by the way, don't introduce me as just say.
But you don't know
Harry
when that
Meghan.
event actually happened. So we can't, because they didn't say this event happened at this particular point in time. They've been very, very accurate in terms of their dating
but they had left,
of when stuff happened.
They had left by then.
I don't know.
Well, it was in America.
Yeah, it was in America, but they have done trips, haven't they?
So there's a lot to talk about with this. but I think one thing that we'll all agree is their love for each other did shine through.
100%.
And seeing it play out in normal Texas and how they'd gone for dinner, it was really heartwarming.
It's lovely.
Let's talk Truth Royal Sussex Squad, the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix. Absolute brilliance. While the tabloids are foaming at the mouth and critics scramble to twist the narrative, what we saw was raw, honest and powerful storytelling. Meghan Sussex, graceful, intelligent and unapologetically herself, finally got to speak in her own voice. And Prince Harry? He showed us vulnerability, growth and a deep understanding of the pain he's carried since losing Princess Diana. The man isn't hiding behind palace curtains, he's confronting history, trauma and injustice head-on. The documentary didn't attack, it educated. It unpacked racism, colonial baggage, media abuse, and the toxic rigidity of a royal system that would rather silence than support. And let's be real, some folks are mad not because it's dishonest, but because it's too honest. To every critic out there crying foul, maybe sit down and actually watch the thing. This isn't a PR stunt, it's a lifeline of truth from 2 people who refuse to be destroyed for the comfort of tradition. And for those of us who actually get it, this is exactly why we ride with Harry and Meghan Sussex. They're rewriting the rules and doing it with class and courage. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and show your love with a super thanks. Let's keep supporting the real story, not the royal spin.